10 years ago, during a visit to the local guild, Jade, a young adventurer, fell in love with the receptionist. Jade slashes a slime in half, and he is proud of himself for defeating a monster all on his own. Jade dreams of becoming a great adventurer, and today he is on his very first quest. The quest is quite simple. He has to defeat monsters and collect the mana stones they drop. When monsters are defeated, they typically leave behind an essence, which is called ether, and their core, which is called a mana stone. The ether is absorbed by the slaying adventurer, and the more monsters they defeat, the more petals are added to their crest. Eventually, it becomes a full flower, and different classes have different flower patterns and petal styles. Jade's class is an enhancer, and he aims to reach rank 10, something no other adventurer of his class has done. He collects the mana stone from the slime he slayed, and he notices a small crack on it, which will lower his reward money. He doesn't lose heart, and he swears to himself to simply try harder next time. He heads back to the guild reception hall, located in the heart of the royal capital. He looks for an empty receptionist window, and he notices that number 18 is open. When he walks up to the counter, the beautiful receptionist takes his breath away. Everything about her is beautiful to him. Her soothing eyes, her silky, smooth, long hair, and the beauty mark under her eye. Her name, Garnet, matches her beauty. Even though Jade isn't old enough to know about the birds and the bees, he knows love at first sight when he experiences it. Garnet tries to get Jade's attention, and he snaps out of his trance. Jade's composure breaks down again because even her voice sounds angelic. If there is proof that God exists, it is surely Garnet. She regretfully informs him that, due to the damage to the mana stone, she can only pay him 500 gold. Jade doesn't really care about that anymore. He just wants to keep talking to Garnet, but the only way he'll ever talk to her is if he takes on quests. He asks for a quest catalog with the aim of taking on as many quests as possible to talk to her as much as possible. It's a completely logical, insane course of action. As the days and weeks pass, Jade takes on increasingly difficult quests, all for the sake of getting 5 minutes of conversation with Garnet. 10 years later, along a rocky and rugged mountain road, a giant stone golem causes the earth to tremble. 2 adventurers give it their all in one last-ditch effort to defeat it, and they lay all their cards on the table. The old man casts Shatter, but to his horror, the golem is unharmed. Realizing that there's nothing they can do, the girl suggests that they retreat. However, while running out of the forest, the golem suddenly crumbles into rocks. The girl asks if the old man has some secret technique, but he points to a nearby cliff. Jade, now a ranked 10 adventurer, has come to rescue them. They ask what a ranked 10 adventurer like him is doing in these parts, and he nearly lets loose that Garnet told him to go here. He claims that he was just here to defeat the golem, and he destroyed it by throwing a rock at it. The girl thought for sure that he'd reinforce and enhance his sword and fight that way instead, but Jade tells her that the sword is purely ceremonial. They ask him why he continues carrying it anyway, and the old man surmises that it must be out of self-discipline. The truth is, Garnet presented the sword to him on behalf of the king, and since it touched Garnet's hands, he never lets it out of his sight. Jade is glad to see them unharmed, and they prepare to journey back. The girl asks how she can become strong like him, and he tells her to continuously keep at it, and eventually she will reach his level. The old man suspects that Jade persevered this far thanks to the power of love, which genuinely catches her off guard. He's never told anyone about his crush on Garnet. The old man adds that it must be the love of the people. Jade decides to just go with that, and Jade returns to the guild carrying a massive mana stone. His arrival is met with acclaim and fanfare. Despite being ranked 10, he continues to use the normal reception counters as opposed to the special ones reserved for higher-ranked adventurers. Jade wishes they'd quiet down, and he hopes that Garnet doesn't think he's a weirdo. He anxiously waits for his turn, and when he is called to the counter, he lays eyes on Garnet, who looks like she hasn't aged a day. He lives for moments like these. He abruptly puts the mana stone on the table, and she asks for his name. Jade, please! You're embarrassing yourself. It's been 10 years, and she doesn't even remember your name. Regardless, Jade furtively observes Garnet's beauty as she inspects the mana stone he brought in. She's beautiful from all possible angles. When the inspection is complete, Garnet hands him a check for 50 million gold. But this means goodbye, and Jade doesn't want it to end. However, this is the extent of the nature of their relationship, and all he can do is prolong it. He accepts the check, but their fingers make the briefest of physical contact. Jade nearly loses it on the spot, but Garnet keeps cool. He swears to never cash this check and promises to frame it in his house. He quickly takes on another quest from the catalog, and the cycle continues. Jade believes that if he keeps doing this, then they'll be friends one day. He'll do it until the day he dies. As he walks away from the counter, Garnet meekly touches her hand where her fingers touch Jade. Elsewhere, in a fairway village, some are thinking about how their request for a subjugation force has been approved, and adventurers are on their way to hunt down the beast. A nearby girl overhears them. Jade handily finishes the monster subjugation quest, and the village celebrates his return. They invite him to stay a while and relax, but Jade says he must return at once to prepare for his next quest. And by next quest, he means talk to Garnet. However, a little girl claims that the vegetable-stealing dragon is still in the area. Though this is viewed as the vivid imagination of a child, she insists she is telling the truth. So, to put these fears to rest, Jade asks her where the dragon flew off to. She points to a remote part of the village, and Jade promises to thoroughly investigate the area. The girl thanks him, and the old man apologizes for the trouble. But this is all in a day's work for Jade. He heads to where the dragon was sighted, though he doubts such a large creature could hide in an abandoned mine. Suddenly, an ominous voice tells him to stop moving. He goes toward the source of the voice, which is asking him to leave behind any food he has on hand. When he reaches his seemingly abandoned cottage, he discovers a small girl in rags. He wonders why a small girl is in here, and he remembers that some dragons are capable of taking on the form of humans. He asks her if she is one, and the cat's out of the bag. She commends him for ascertaining her true identity, and she boasts that if she were in her original form, she'd eat him in one bite. Before Jade allows himself to be eaten, he asks why a dragon would willingly take on the form of a human. She unhappily explains that her original body is so big that she can't get full, so she thought that if she shrank herself down into a small human, she could stave off hunger for a while longer. Jay thinks that this is kind of sad. She's wanted to eat meat for so long, but her small body prevents her from hunting. He asks why she doesn't just use her dragon form to hunt, but she explains that bad people called adventurers are roaming around hunting monsters, which means they must be after her too. However, when she learns that she was spotted raiding the farm for vegetables in her dragon form, she hurriedly runs before adventurers find her. Jade grabs her arm and says that he is an adventurer. The girl looks at him for a moment and she loses it. She runs around in circles out of fear, but he reassures her that he doesn't hunt down lolis. The girl believes him. Jade concludes that the dragon girl isn't intentionally malevolent, but hungry. He asks her if she is a white dragon, since that species of dragon is considered a protected species. She swears she's white, and she'll prove it. She runs outside, removes her shirt, and transforms into a lustrous, white dragon. Photoshop hasn't been invented yet, so this is all the proof that Jade needs. The girl returns to her human form, and she asks why white dragons are protected. Jade explains that long ago, a white dragon saved his country from ruin. She promises to be a good little dragon girl from now on, so Jade suggests that they go and meet the king. If she receives an order of protection, she'll be able to live peacefully with all the necessities she needs. The girl agrees. The next day, wearing a fashionable new sundress, the dragon girl accompanies Jade to meet the king of the Sundale Kingdom. When the king sees Jade, he believes that he is ready to accept his proposal to be the next king. Jade politely turns him down again and explains that he has come here with a white dragon capable of transformation magic. The dragon girl stiffly introduces herself, promising that she can dress and eat by herself. She swears she won't cause any trouble, so please give her an order of protection. The king readily agrees, due to the debt they owe Jade and the white dragons, but he can't exactly let a dragon girl roam unattended. Jade sees the girl fighting back tears, so he offers to become her guardian, and the king gives him his blessing. The girl is grateful to Jade, and he asks what he should call her. She allows him to pick a name for himself, and he settles on Doromi. She thinks it's quite plain, but she'll allow it. They drop by the Adventurers Guild, which Doromi thinks is a scary and malicious place. Jade heads inside to give her report to Garnet, leaving Doromi outside. Nervous about all the people around her, she calms her nerves by peeking inside, and she notices how much fun Jade is having talking to the lovely Garnet. Even the immortal dragon girl is charmed by her looks, and Doromi's opinion of the guild improves. Jade returns, and he prepares to bring Dormy home. He reveals that he himself hasn't been home in over a year since he's too busy questing, but all that is about to change now that he has a dragon loli to take care of. They take a long, leisurely walk to Jade's house, thus beginning their new life together. Outside, a girl notices that her neighbor has finally returned. The responsibility of caring for a dragon is suddenly thrust onto Jade. On the way home, Doromi says that the guild looks like a lot of fun since Jade looked chipper on his way out. She's only half right since the reason for Jade's good mood was that he got to see Garnet again. They finally reach Jade's house, a modest 2-story cottage with an extremely explicit heart motive. Donnie thinks the house is awesome. Jade has chosen to convey his love in the most loving manner possible by dedicating his entire house to Garnet. Every aspect of his home is furnished and adorned with hearts, which the carpenters thought was to convey his love for the people. Jade ushers her inside, and he gives her a grand tour of the interior. The foyer's lights automatically turn on. The massive bathroom is the epitome of luxury, and it features a circular bathtub. The bedroom is also built with the highest quality materials, and it's so soft that it should be illegal. Finally, they enter the walk-in closet, which features dozens, if not hundreds, of cute, frilly clothes. His collection also features 28 wedding dresses, and one of them in particular is his personal favorite. Everything in this room is meant for Garnet, and there is a dress and outfit for every occasion, mood, and style imaginable. Doremi wants to see these dresses in action, so she asks Jade to call his wife here, the same wife that supposedly owns all these wedding dresses. It now dawns on Jade that what he is doing is incredibly creepy, and only a degenerate would be proud of all this. Jade considers coming clean and admitting to Doremi the truth behind this house of horrors, but he decides to simply distract her with the promise of a food. Quest completed. She takes a bath, and she exits squeaky clean. She thinks it is a waste that Jade isn't home more often, but his adventurer duties take priority. He tells her that they'll be leaving early, so she should go to sleep after dinner. Doremi can't wait to sleep in that large, fluffy bed, and Jade prays that one day he can wake up next to Garnet. Jade renews his resolve to keep doing quests so he can keep seeing Garnet. While walking around the house, Doremi notices that one of his neighbors is leaving. To Jade's knowledge, his neighbors are a sweet, elderly couple. However, his eyes go wide when he sees Garnet step out of the house. Jade's brain processes this information for what seems like a century, and he is hit with a million questions. Chief among them is, what is Garnet doing here? The donor runs up and greets Garnet, and she wishes them a good evening. Jade struggles to stutter out a greeting of her own, but he is overwhelmed by her beauty. In fact, he realizes that this is his first time seeing her in casual wear, and she's gorgeous. The view is so stunning that it engraves itself in the back of his mind forever. He regains composure, and he does his best to wish her a good evening. She returns the gesture, and Jade celebrates his first non-work-related conversation with her. He can already see them getting married. Garnet is glad she was finally able to talk to him too, but only in the capacity of introducing herself to her neighbors. Now that Jade knows she's right next door, he has even more reason to go home as soon as possible. He introduces Doremi as one of his relatives, and when he tries introducing himself, she says that she already knows his name since he comes to the guild every day. Jade is overjoyed to know that she knows his name, and he proclaims this as the happiest day of his life. He was convinced that she didn't know his name, but she explained that it is strict guild procedure to always ask for it. Suddenly, the conversation turns stale, and he struggles to find new topics to talk about. He tries offering to hold her bag for her, but she turns him down, explaining that it currently only contains her underwear. Doremi asks her where she's going, and Garnet explains that since her house has no bath, she is going to visit the public one. Jade hopes that Doremi will invite Garnet to use the bathroom they have at home, but she simply waves goodbye. Jade internally screams. Garnet walks away, but Jade can still etch the image of her back into his mind. Doremi can tell that Jade likes Garnet, and he outright admits it. He doesn't have to be embarrassed since Doremi proudly says that she loves Jade, but only in a puppy-like capacity. She asks him if Garnet has helped him in some way, and he explains the nature of their relationship. Doremi suggests that he gift her a flower as a thank you for everything she's done, remarking that she could smell an earthy scent from her, which means she likely takes up gardening as a hobby. This is the best advice Jade has ever heard in his life, and he swears to find a rare flower to give her. Jade and Doremi head to the deserted plains, a land so desolate and inhospitable that Bareth could pop up at any moment. They eventually reach their objective, the World Tree. Nestled among the massive cliffside and the base of the World Tree is the Starflower, an incredibly rare plant. For the past 2 weeks, he'd been asking florists what the best possible flower gift is, and they all gave him the same answer, the Starflower. It is a flower so rare and remote that not even the most prestigious flower shops have it. Doremi is dismayed that they'd have to scale the rocky cliffs to get this flower, and Jade tells her that there's a more conventional route, but it'd take a week to traverse. He wants Garnet to have this flower now. Jade begins climbing the cliffside with relative ease, and Doremi exclaims that this is far easier than flying. However, when they near the top, they hear the screams of a woman in danger. It might not be Garnet, but he won't ignore someone in trouble. The scream startles Jade and Doremi, and he makes haste to make it to the top. When they reach the top, Doremi warns Jade that a giant hornworm is attacking 2 adventurers, and one of them is gravely injured. Jade wastes no time, and he quickly rushes in and beats the hornworm to death with punches and kicks. The 2 girls cry tears of joy, and they thank Jade for rescuing them. They didn't think that the great hero himself would come to save them. One of the girls apologizes that her barrier wasn't enough to stop the hornworm, but Jade thanks her for this. He explains that he's after the Starflower, and thanks to her barrier, the precious flowers are unharmed. The 2 girls are delighted that they were able to be of help. The pair wave goodbye, and Doremi says that Jade was really cool back there. He shows her the potted starflower he picked out, which has already started to bloom. They got what they came for, so Jade decided to go home. He really hopes that Garnet likes it. Unfortunately, when they return home, starflowers appear irreversibly dry and shriveled up. Jade nearly faints, but Doremi convinces him to try watering it. He does so, and without even waiting a day, he considers it a failed effort. They try stirring it by calling it the best flower ever, but predictably, nothing happens. As a last resort, Doremi suggests that they give it to Garnet. Jade thinks that's a stupid idea, but she reasons that since Garnet knows a lot about flowers, she might be able to fix it. Jade thinks about this long and hard, and he decides that it's worth a shot. They head next door to Garnet's house, but there's no answer. Doremi suspects she must be at the public bathhouse. Jade debates that they look creepy just standing around here, and Doremi reassures him that he isn't a creepy or scary person at all. He repeats this to convince himself, but Garnet catches him doing it, which makes him seem like a creepy person. Jade notices that Garnet's hair is still glistening with water, which means she's fresh out of the bath. She seems even more mesmerizing than before. He could stare at her forever, but he's here for a different reason. They apologize for disturbing her, and Jade hastily brings out his gift. He presents her with the starflower, clinging for dear life. She finds it odd that he's the one giving a housewarming gift. He apologizes for how shriveled it looks, but he claims it was radiant when he first got it. Garnet looks at it closely and identifies it as a starflower. She loves them. Jade's heart and mind explode like fireworks, and he has to remind himself that she's talking about the flower. He asks her if she'd be able to say it somehow, but she regretfully says that she can't. She explains that starflowers need nutrients from the world tree, so once removed from their natural habitat, they are unable to sustain themselves. She apologizes for being unable to help them, but Jade says he should be sorry for bringing her such a pitiful gift. However, Garnet doesn't mind, and she asks if she can keep it anyway. Jade happily hands it over, but Garnet doesn't need the pot. She plans to press the flower and turn it into a bookmark, preserving its beauty for all time. Jade rolls around his head like a high school girl in love. Jade hands it over to her, and he bashfully thanks her instead of the other way around. Garnet accepts the flower, and she promises to treasure it always. Jade is caught in the crossfire. He wishes her a good night, and she wishes him the same. She also thanks him for the housewarming gift, and Jade looks like he couldn't be happier. On the way home, Jade celebrates this success. Their plan went off without a hitch. He thanks Doremi for her help, and as a reward, he promises to treat her to whatever she wants. The next day, Garnet begins using the starflower bookmark. Her co-workers can't help but notice it, and they call it super cute. They ask her where she got it from, and she explains she recently got some flowers and turned them into a bookmark. They ask her where she got it from, and after thinking of Jade's face, a small smile forms on her face, and she simply replies to her neighbor. 2 weeks have passed since Jade gave Garnet the starflower, and he returns to the guild after completing another quest. He heads inside the guild hall and mentally prepares himself to go to Garnet's counter, which has always been since time immemorial number 18. Jade lays eyes on her, and she looks as stunning as ever. She confirms that the mana crystal is from the Chimera subjugation quest, but before she can begin her inspection, there is suddenly a loud growling sound. Jade wonders where it came from and realizes that it came from her stomach. Though Garnet expertly conceals her embarrassment regardless, Jade can see hints of blushing on her face. He tries to think of a witty one-liner to say to her, and he considers saying Doremi gets hungry all the time, but even he thinks this is a bad idea. However, he ends up wasting time, and before he knows it, their brief exchange has ended without him saying anything flirty. He leaves without taking another quest to spare Garnet the embarrassment of her stomach growling. He returns outside and reconvenes with Doremi, who boasts that she counted 18 bugs today. Jade suggests that they go out to celebrate. They head inside a relatively empty restaurant that Jade last visited years ago. Admittedly, before he adopted Doremi, he hardly ate outside. The owner is surprised to see Jade, the great hero, back in his restaurant. Doremi introduces herself and exclaims that she loves stew, so she would like stew with a lot of meat. Give her the stew now. Jade places an order for a seafood plate, and the owner heads to the kitchen to prepare their orders. Minutes later, he returns with their orders. Jade and Doremi dig in, and they are blown away by the flavor. Thankfully, their clothes weren't. Suddenly, the doorbells ring, and another customer walks in. To Jade's surprise, it is none other than Garnet. He wonders if she wanted to have dinner with him and followed him all the way here, but it turns out she's just a regular. Not everyone's like you, Jade. He eagerly waits to hear what her regular dish is, but the chef apologizes. He just served the last of his seafood platter, the very same platter that Jade just finished. He cannot bear to see the look of disappointment on her face, so he gets up and swears to get some fish for him. The owner is glad that Jade would do this for him. but he's doing this for Garnet, not him. However, the owner says that doing so might be difficult right now since there seems to be a monster out on the coast terrorizing fishing boats. Neither Jade nor Doremi can find it in themselves to forgive this monster. He asks if there is a subjugation quest open for it, and Garnet recalls there being one but for the rank 6 adventurers, which explains why Jade never saw it. However, due to guild rules, Jade is unable to undertake this request until it gets bumped up to his level. But there's a loophole. What if he doesn't treat it like a quest? Let's say, hypothetically, he went out to sea, and hypothetically, the monster attacked him, and hypothetically, he defeated it. Maybe, hypothetically, Garnet would fall in love with him. The next day, Jade and Doremi head to the coast, where he has purchased a charming seaside villa. Just like at home, he is rarely here. Doremi asks why he has a villa anyway, and he tells her that it's because of the gorgeous seaside views. The truth is, he bought it so that he could watch the sunset with Garnet. Jade is so delusional that I'm not even mad. I feel sorry for him. Jade enters his villa to retrieve some fishing equipment. Doremi asks him if he plans to use this to catch the monster, but he insists that first and foremost, it's just for fishing. If the sea monster attacks him, then so be it. Jade plans to bring the fish he catches back to the restaurant owner, where he hopes to raise his affection points with Garnet. The plan is foolproof. They head to the harbor, but Jade senses that the atmosphere is quite tense. Doremi finds Jade's boat, which is one of those leisure-type vessels for quiet romantic trips. Doremi carefully boards the boat, but a few sailors loudly warn them not to embark out to sea. Jade asks why they can't set sail, and the sailors explain that a kraken was recently sighted, and setting out to sea now would be disastrous. Jade insists that it's imperative that he set sail now, and when the sailor sees that his ship is quite small, he remarks that there's a chance that the kraken won't notice him. This completely ruins Jade's plan of using himself as bait, so he offers sacks of gold to the owner of a nearby galleon. The sailor says no amount of money will convince him to sail, so Jade offers to simply pay for the boat if it gets destroyed. When they learn that he is Jade, the hero, their demeanor changes. They ask if he is here to slay the kraken, and he explains that he's just here to fish. He explains his plan for killing the monster in self-defense, and they ask why he's willing to go so far as to use himself as bait. Doremi claims that they're just doing this out of the goodness of their hearts. As a small thank you to all the fishermen in the area, the men are moved by Jade's compassion. Hearing this, the man offers to let Jade use the boat for free. Just like that, they get a galleon. The only other time you could see two people manning a ship this large is in Sea of Thieves. Jade casts his line, and in no time at all, he reels in a small fish. Not wanting to lose, Doremi casts her line too, but she catches nothing, and she begins to sulk. Jade suggests that she's in a bad spot, and he offers to switch places. Doremi is excited to finally catch something, and in no time at all, after casting her line, she feels a huge fish tugging on her rod. She reels it in with all her might, and she dredges up a gigantic sea scorpion. Jade realizes that this is the monster terrorizing the fishing boats. Doremi hurls her small collection of rocks at the scorpion to make it go away, but this only makes it angry. She fears that their ship will capsize, but Jade reassures her that he'll reinforce the vessel beforehand with his magic. All they have to do now is defeat the monster. Jade leaps up and defeats the sea scorpion with a single punch, and it sinks to the depths below. They return triumphantly to port, and they tell the sailors the good news. They are extremely grateful for Jade, and they can finally go back to fishing. Jade's job here is done, and now Garnet can eat some fresh fish. Later, Jade and Donnie decide to eat at the restaurant from yesterday. Just as Jade had hoped, Garnet was also in the neighborhood. He approaches her and manages to strike up a conversation for once. After making some small talk, they tell her that they just came back from a fishing expedition and that they just happened to defeat the monster. Plating the nearby coast, Doremi excitedly recounts how she almost single-handedly defeated a sea scorpion with her rocks and stared at it without taking a step back. This is almost entirely fiction, but Garnet decides to play along, joking that she had expected Jade to be the one to slay the beast. Garnet asks him if he plans to drop by the guild tomorrow, and he promises to. It dawns on him that Garnet noticed him missing today, and she admits that she was worried when he didn't come in today. Jade could die right now, but she'll settle for being overwhelmingly happy. Jade is used to being treated as an undefeatable adventurer, so imagine his delight to learn that Garnet was worried for his well-being. He wonders if she thinks he is unreliable, but she shakes her head and explains that she doesn't think of him as Jade the hero, but as Jade, her little brother. She's been watching him grow up since he was 12 years old, so she's grown quite fond of him. Jade finds it lonely being treated as this untouchable hero on a pedestal, so he's glad that some people still treat him like a normal person. But Jade realizes he glossed over something important. Garnet thinks of him as a little brother, not as a romantic interest. He is disheartened, but he won't give up hope. When Jade learns that she also plans to eat dinner at the restaurant from yesterday, he invites her to eat with them. Since they'll have a hard time finishing all the fish they caught, Garnet is all too happy to lend a hand. Jade bashfully walks by her side, and he can't help but notice how good she smells and how beautiful her side profile is. It almost feels like they're out on a date, but all good things must come to an end, and his blissful walk with her lasted only 5 seconds. Regardless, he plans to become a regular at this restaurant to spend as much time as possible with Garnet. The owner welcomes them back, and they present him with all the fish they caught. He thanks them, remarking that for the last time, he'll be able to make him something delicious. Jade wonders what he means by the last time. Garnet hands him a bouquet of flowers, and it doesn't seem like it's for a birthday or something. He asks what's going on, and the owner explains that today is his last day. He's worked in the food business long enough, and he plans to move in with his daughter to the countryside. Jade hands him a sack of gold as a retirement fund, but he says that the gesture alone is enough. Jade tears up because this is the last time he'll be eating here, and he savors being able to enjoy a meal while touching elbows with Garnet. This is a moment of happiness he'll never forget. One evening, Doremi entertains her city friends with an affluent story of how she defeated a Hydra. Before she can embellish further, Jade exits, looking like his crypto crashed. A few minutes earlier, Jade entered the guild to give his report to Garnet. He's been in a good mood lately since he's now able to maintain a conversation with her. He walks through those familiar doors, and as usual, Garnet is looking absolutely marvelous. Before, he'd be racked with nervousness and unable to utter more than 3 words without stuttering. But times have changed. He casually hands her the mana stone for today's quest. But while Garnet inspects it, she suddenly has a coughing fit. This greatly worries Jade, who believes she must have caught COVID or something. After receiving his reward, he hurriedly runs out without accepting another quest. He doesn't want to bother her with intrusive questions, but he fears this might be the last time he sees her before her untimely death. JB recounts the encounter with Doremi, and he resolves to find some panacea that can cure any illness. He doesn't know if it exists, but he'll make sure it exists, and then he'll find it. Doremi offers any assistance her tiny little hands can offer. First things first, he needs to set aside $1 billion to pay a pharmacist to develop the medicine for him. They head to the local apothecary, but Doremi panics upon seeing jars of floating eyeballs. Jade reassures her that they won't be cutting her up or anything. A woman with a bloody bone saw. Doremi nearly passed out right then and there. The lady apologizes for scaring her, as she was just busy cutting up some monsters. Jade greets the woman, Surin, with a friendly no time, no see. Surin is the daughter of Ku, the physician who owns the apothecary. Jade is hoping to speak to Ku, but Surin explains that her grandmother just retired and left for the countryside. What the heck? Are housing prices dirt cheap there or something? Jade had hoped to enlist the help of a top-notch apothecary like her, but Surin says she can perform just as well as her grandmother. Jade pins all his hopes on her and begs Shiren to help the girl he loves. She begins by asking for this girl's symptoms and reports that Garnet has a cough and a sore throat. Surin tells him to feel free to browse their dozens of options for cough medicine, but Jade refuses to use run-of-the-mill, over-the-counter medicine. This cough is serious business, and he wants very serious medicine. Surin repeatedly confirms that Garnet's only symptom is coughing, but Jade insists that she's at death's door. Surin senses that this might be more trouble than it's worth, so she reluctantly agrees to give it a shot. Jade adds fatigue to Garnet's list of symptoms, so Surin agrees to develop medicine right then and there. She asks for Doremi's assistance in developing the medicine, but she nearly passes out when she is asked to retrieve a bottle of dragon's blood. Jade does his best to calm down a terrified Doremi. Minutes later, Surin completes her special order of medicine to combat Garnet's cough and treat her fatigue. She charges him 30,000 gold for it, and Jade can't believe it's this cheap, and he happily hands over the payment. Jade quickly returns to Garnet's house, hoping to give it to her as soon as possible. He knocks on her door, and to his relief, she hasn't died yet. Sure, she just has a cough. Jade pushes the special medicine into her hands, explaining that he'd been worried about her all day. However, Garnet explains that she's already recovered. A fishbone had simply been stuck in her throat, and it had been bothering her all day. Garnet is surprised that he was this worried about her, and Jade nearly gives away that he likes her romantically. He manages to steer himself into saying she's a special receptionist for the guild, and that's why he went so far as to commission a special cure. Garnet says there are plenty of other receptionists, but Jade says that she's special to him. This is also the reason why she gave the old chef owner a bouquet of flowers. Garnet smiles, and she happily accepts his kindness. She isn't sick anymore, but her flowers still are. To his surprise, Garnet invites him into her house so he can view her flowers. The sudden invitation surprises Jade so much that you'd think he was being proposed to or something. He regains his composure and he calmly enters Garnet's home for the first time. As expected of Garnet, the home is neat and tidy, and he can hardly believe that he's actually inside her home. Doromi notices a small pot with wilting flowers, and Garnet quickly administers the medicine. She empties it into the soil, and to their delight, it blooms seconds later. The three of them celebrate this little miracle. Garnet thanks them for their help, but they are all too happy to lend any aid they can. Doromi's stomach grumbles, and Garnet mentions she was just about to leave for dinner, and she invites them to come along. Jade practically jumps at this chance. It's a dream come true to be invited out to dinner by none other than the girl his dreams. Jade couldn't be happier. A few days later, Jade reminisces about the great time he had with Garnet. Suddenly, he and Doromi are roused by a loud rumbling sound, which he senses is coming from right next door. His stomach sinks. Garnet is in danger. He wastes no time in rushing out of the house, and he bumps into Garnet, who frantically begs for his help. She says something is on the second floor, but she doesn't elaborate on what it is. Jade sees firsthand just how shaken up Garnet looks, and she fears that it must be a robber or a home intruder. He tells her to stay close by, and he instructs Doromi to protect her at all costs. For once, Doromi feels like working. Jade enters Garnet's home, promising to utterly destroy whoever dares enter his beloved's home. He peers into the bedroom, which is much messier than usual. Jade deduces that there was an intense struggle here, fueling his hatred for his mystery assailant even more. However, he sees no sign of them anywhere, and Garnet suggests that they still might be under the bed. Jade lifts the bed up, and something fast suddenly skates out, but this is enough to cause Garnet to shy away. Jade is incredibly jealous that Doromi gets to comfort her. As it turns out, the culprit is a little spider. Doromi says spiders are scary. She got a stomachache from eating one once. Garnet nearly passes out herself. Regardless, Jade promised to deal with this problem, and he won't break it. Now, he unsuccessfully tries to grab it, but it skitters around and hides underneath Garnet's clothes. He's a little embarrassed about touching her clothes, but he doesn't want them to think he's scared of spiders either. He abandons all inhibitions and just goes for it, and he manages to catch the spider and throw it outside. However, in the process, he accidentally damages her bed. Garnet says there's no problem. She was going to replace it anyway. Garnet offers her deepest thanks, and she says she is glad to have him as her neighbor. Jade couldn't have asked for a better reward. However, the issue remains that Garnet's bed is still broken. Jade offers to let her have her bed instead, and Doromi seconds his proposal. Garnet thanks them for being such great friends, and Jade is delighted. A few minutes later, he drags the bed into Garnet's room. Garnet is hesitant to accept something so expensive looking, so Doni suggests they trade beds instead. Garnet sees no problem with it. Jade tells Garnet to call him anytime she needs help, and she remarks that she'll be counting on you. Jade is filled with utter bliss. He carries the bed back into his home, and he is still in disbelief that it's actually here. He climbs into its sheets, and it still smells very much like her. This might be a little too stimulating for him. As expected, Jade is not able to get any sleep, and he wakes up more exhausted than when he climbed into bed. Meanwhile, a little girl prepares to wear her first beret into the world, hoping to be a great adventurer, just like Jade.
Speaking of that adventurer, the sleepy Doromi was with him, complaining that today's quest took them until morning, and they still needed to wait for the train before they could return to the capital. In the middle of her yawns, Jade noticed a girl staring at them for quite a while now, so he asked her if she needed anything from them. Weirdly enough, Morin requested Jade's permission to look under their feet, to which the lowly dragon responded by taking off her shoes. In the first place, the aspiring adventurer just wanted to check what was under the bench, but her expression turned sad after not seeing what she was there for. Apparently, Morin dropped her wallet and lost all the money she had, leaving her with no coins to spend on anything. Even though it was just this girl's second day of an adventure, Jade could only go seriously from shock and concern. But then, he discovered that Moran was on her way to the capital's Adventurers Guild, so her first ever quest would be issued there. Jade instantly smiled when he heard that, mainly because the journey of the novice adventurer took him way back to when he was just beginning. Eventually, Jade learned Moran's name and age, which was almost 12 years old, just a little bit closer to being allowed to register as an adventurer. Then he offered to buy a train ticket for the penniless girl, bringing hope to Moran because her journey was far from over even though she lost all her money. Nonetheless, the aspiring adventurer didn't want it to be free, so it was settled that she would pay it back with her paycheck someday. someday. No pressure. With those conditions in mind, Morin accepted Jade's offer and thanked him before going inside the train to start their trip toward the capital. It would take them until dusk before they arrived, but it seemed like a place to stay wouldn't be an issue for the young girl, as she revealed that her sister resided in the capital. Moreover, she worked at the guild as a receptionist and was a woman who had the support flower crest, which was possibly the same as Maureen according to Jade. Support was the rarest of all roles, and the probability order went from guard, attack, enhancer, and support, with the first being the most common. Despite the rarity of her highly likely possible crest, it turned out that Morin wanted to be an enhancer like Jade himself, because she aspired to be like the great adventurer Jade. The person in question was in absolute shock thanks to those words. But Morin, on the other hand, showed an overly bright expression while asking the two if they had met Jade before. Albeit Sleepy Doromi didn't hesitate to answer the question by revealing that the guy beside her was none other than the famous great adventurer that everyone idolized. Surprised, Morin let out a confused noise, but seeing the full-bloomed flower crest in Jade's hand caused her to confirm that the man sitting in front of her eyes was Jade himself. Apparently, this girl was a big fan, and she wanted to follow in Jade's footsteps thanks to the story she heard from her sister, depicting the adventurer as a hard worker every time she went home and met Morin. Thus, Doromi wondered if there were tales about her too, but unfortunately, there were none because it had been a year since Morin last met her sister. Still, the lowly dragon was confident that this year would be full of her heroism as a gallant girl who accompanied Jade, and she was willing to tell her epic adventures right here, and now while the train was still moving. Eventually, they reached the capital and parted ways, because Jade and Doromi would head home while Morin waited to be picked up here at the train station by her sister. Thankfully, Morin was brimming with motivation as she promised to do her best and be as strong as Jade someday, so they waved goodbye and headed on their own ways. Doromi was so tired, however, that the humanized dragon almost fell asleep without changing into a cleaner and more comfortable outfit. If not for Jade, who was getting used to his guardian duties. Thus, the white dragon lay on the bed, relaxed and content until she woke up in the middle of the night to tell Jade she was hungry. Jade immediately learned that his night might get ruined, specifically his sleep because he was ready to rest. But it didn't look like anything would stop Doromi from imagining some freshly seasoned chicken and ribs and drooling from those mouth-watering thoughts. So he decided to go out for dinner before the lowly, saliva-stained Garnet's bed. As soon as they exited the door, a familiar voice called them out, and it was Morin who, for mysterious reasons, was together with the guild receptionist. The surprising combination surprised the heavens out of Jade, but by connecting the dots and seeing them holding hands, he instantly concluded the same thing you are thinking. Eventually, Garnet thanked Jade for lending his money for her sister, which confirmed our suspicions regarding Morin being Garnet's younger sibling. In perfect timing, Jade remembered the little girl saying that her sister always talked about the super hardworking Jade when coming home, not to mention the possibility of being called Jade, and the ultimate compliment that would bring any S down to their knees. Super hard worker, once again, this was another blissful moment for our non-harem protagonist. But while he was slowly ascending to heaven, Garnet volunteered to pay the borrowed money in Mar. Instead, Jade told her not to worry and rushed the payment because helping each other out was just the proper neighbor etiquette. He reminded the receptionist that they were friends, so small things like this were always a big okay. Hearing those words, Garnet blessed Jade with a sweet smile and informed her curious little sister that she was really friends with Jade. For the first time, the adventurer invited the receptionist to eat outside, but Garnet refused it for now, given that she and Morin just ate before going home. It looked grim for a moment until Garnet reassured Jade that they could do it next time and share a proper meal with all four of them on another day. Jade was satisfied with how it turned out, so it was a good night's sleep this time around, and no more inappropriate thoughts. As the sun rose, a knock resounded on Jade's door, and he opened it, albeit wondering who. In the world, it was this early in the morning. To his surprise, the culprit of this overly shining day was Garnet, who, for unknown reasons, was looking specifically for Jade. Jade immediately pinched himself to check if it was not some kind of a hallucination or a dream, and it was not. So he focused his gaze on Garnet's stunning appearance because it was his first time seeing her in a skirt. And that was an unbearable level of cuteness for this guy because it was too rare, as Garnet usually wore pants. Jade etched this sight into the depths of his memory, although there was a bit of a problem when doing that. Staring face to face for a long period was plain weird. Nonetheless, Jade pointed out the woman's casual outfit and learned that Garnet always wore one when going to work. meaning she would do exactly that right now. But that was for later, as she would discuss something with Jade first. Without hesitation, Jade allocated years' worth of his time to listen, assuming it would be something good, allowing Garnet to ask the adventurer if he would go to the guild today. However, her determined face turned dispirited as soon as she knew Jade would head to the mentioned place. As a result, Garnet started to leave while apologizing for waking him up, leaving the adventurer shocked and wondering why. The moment quickly ended with that one question. Still, Jade refused to let it be over and told Garnet to state her request, as he would surely hear it out, especially because the receptionist made the effort to come here instead of waiting for him in the guild. He looked into the woman's eyes and advised her not to hold back and rely on him because they were friends, enabling Garnet to reveal that she had a personal favor to ask Jade about her sister Marin. It turned out that Garnet wanted him to watch over Marin during the day, as she believed her sister would be in good hands and Jade's care. Jade's eyes widened upon learning that the woman he loved trusted him to this degree, so he accepted her request, relieving Garnet because the only ones she could ask were Doromi and Jade. Finally, Jade's 10 years of effort were paying off, and he was crying in the depths of his mind before asking if the kid he would take care of was still sleeping. Putting that aside, Garnet shyly wondered if she looked strange in a skirt because Jade kept glancing at her non-stop for a few minutes. Of course, weird was not the right word for Jade, as he genuinely thought that the skirt matched Garnet's style very well, making the receptionist happy as she revealed that her new outfit was a present from Marin, and she was wearing it albeit not feeling confident about skirts in general. Jade commented about Marin's love for Garnet and vice versa, as the receptionist really wanted her sister to be happy, even though she was wearing such a sad expression that said Garnet was against Marin becoming an adventurer. After all, danger wouldn't escape the young girl's everyday life the moment she turned into a full-fledged member of the guild. Yet, even though Jade understood his crush's wish, he wanted to respect both sides and decided to support Marin until she could do adventures in peace. A few hours later, Garnet's sister met Jade and Doromi, who would guide her on a tour around the capital. After a short stop in the guild, obviously, Marin was excited to start the trip, so they wasted zero time in finishing Jade's report and gathering with other kids to listen to these heroic tales, which were undoubtedly impressive for Marin because where could you see a girl with no crest facing monsters head-on? Afterward, the group entered the boutique where clothes and accessories were on display for the little girl to look at and choose. As a result, Marin showed her 10,000 allowances from Garnet because she wanted to have the same clothes as Jade, but they eventually settled on Dee's style instead for size purposes. Thus, Marin chose from a one-piece dress, a skirt, and a robe, which were all white. But this girl still couldn't decide on one. Well, they had put it aside for a handshake between the two allies who liked white clothes, eventually focusing on other things instead, like shoes, handbags, or jewelry, among others. After a few minutes of going here and wandering there, the two bought adorable matching bags that Doromi would use as storage for her rock collection. She then gave a pebble to Marin as proof of their friendship, and Garnet's sister liked it, so she put a hairpin on Doromi as a gift for her valuable present. Furthermore, Marin and Jade complimented the White Dragon's look by calling her cute, and that made Doromi glad and embarrassed as they headed toward their next destination, the armory. Unfortunately, it was bye-bye for the adorable Loli, as she was now a fully armored Loli without any hint of cuteness whatsoever. Thankfully, they discarded the idea of buying this defensive equipment, as it did not fit Marin's preferences. They decided to go with a shield dagger pair instead. Eventually, Marin was able to test the surprisingly light shield, which was made from the strongest metal in this world, the mithril. The price looked inevitably expensive, however, but Jade took it on from there to handle the bargain so Marin could still have money for lunch. Jade went to the shopkeeper alone and asked the price of the shield, but learned that mithril had increased in value, so the equipment would be worth higher than the buyer's budget. To everyone's surprise, Jade offered 5 million for the shield, and the owner happily accepted that, despite being dumbfounded. On the other hand, Marin was absolutely flabbergasted that the price of her new equipment was an unexpected 5,000, and she thought it was a miracle because Jade said so, to back up his lie. Nonetheless, Marin was happy to use her new weapon, and in the end, that's all that mattered for both Jade, Doromi, and especially the aspiring adventurer who attained more confidence to reach her dreams thanks to this shield. Thus, the two girls held hands as it was lunchtime after shopping, but it seemed like Jade was being jaded, and he wished to do what they were currently doing to Garnet in the evening. The receptionist arrived home and saw Marin waiting for her while passing the time with Jade and Doromi. The young girl immediately told Garnet about today's events and eventually showed her the mithril shield she was so proud to use, informing the receptionist that it was only worth 5,000 in the armory shop. However, Garnet knew the actual price, so she instantly found out that Jade had done something and smiled at Marin to maintain the beautiful lie. As thanks to the adventurer, Garnet invited them to treat to dinner, but Jade wanted to pay for it anyway. He told the receptionist there was no need to bring the favor back, as he would let Marin join their general house cleaning tomorrow, only if Garnet was okay with it, of course. The woman next door chuckled in reply while assuring Jade that she trusted him with all her heart. Leaving Marin to Jade again was perfectly fine. Thus, the great adventurer went over protective mode just for the sake of it, and promised Garnet he would protect Marin at all costs, as if there was something dangerous in his house. It seemed like his protection wasn't needed, though, as the cleaning shield hero rose the following day to exterminate some germs. Apparently, Garnet had already headed to work when she left the house, because this equipment surely wouldn't be here if older CIS was there. Despite their cleansing weapons, Doromi and Marin wiped the entire house squeaky clean until hours had passed, and the whole place became spotless thanks to their job well done. Jade offered to buy any treat they wanted as a reward for their hard work, but before the lollipops and the sweets, Doromi showed the letter she accidentally found while cleaning earlier. According to the Dragon Girl, it was wedged between some books, and it turned out that Jade completely forgot its existence, even though it was from the king himself. Marin was utterly baffled that they personally knew the monarch of their kingdom, not to mention he was unexpectedly an average person, at least for Doromi. Nevertheless, Jade revealed that the letter was an invitation to a ball for all adventurers ranked 8 or above, which was held every year to celebrate the king's birthday. Birthday, obviously. These two were eager to know if there was a lot of tasty food in there, but Jade wasn't really sure because he hadn't attended the ball even once. Of course, his hidden reason was to do quests and spend time with Garnet in the guild, although Jade also secretly wished to escort the woman she loves to that place. "Then why don't you just take my sister?" said Marin, who guessed right on the spot what Jade was thinking, and she believed it would be okay because, in her eyes, they got along fairly well as good friends. Up until then, Jade had given up on that idea as his interactions with Garnet were purely business-related. But now that they were more than that, and the receptionist was showing him her sweet, genuine smile more often, Jade gathered the determination to man up and make his wish a reality this time. With that said, another romantic quest ensued as Jade challenged himself to invite his beloved woman to the grand ball in the kingdom. However, the possibility of getting rejected was also high, and Doromi took the liberty to jinx it by informing her guardians she would go with him instead, when Garnet said no to the invitation. Therefore, Jade needed to pray, practice, and it just came at the right time when Doromi and Marin would take a bath, allowing Jade to have his secret training arc in front of the receptionist's house. Unsurprisingly, this guy was overwhelmed by pressure and nervousness, so he convinced himself it would all be okay with the smart approach of asking Garnet to be his partner in the ball. Pretending the Madonna was here, Jade tried many different methods, starting with a talk about the weather to a plain, straightforward sentence that lacked appeal to something that focused on the king's jolly birthday. Needless to say, all of those had utterly failing marks, and it seemed like the difficulty was shifting toward Demon Lord level, until Jade realized what needed to be done, as all he wanted was to dance with his beloved woman, putting all his feelings into the next phrase. Jade yelled the words that were straight to the point and emitted a positive impact that would surely move Garnet. Speaking of her, she was behind the shocked hero, possibly all this time, and it was clearly an absolute horror for the adventurer, despite the heavenly mesmerizing appearance of the receptionist he loved anyway. Garnet was here to check on her sister while she was on a break, so Jade informed her that the kids were bathing themselves as they had just finished cleaning. On another note, Jade feared that Garnet thought of him as some kind of a weirdo now, so he confirmed it by asking the receptionist's opinion about him. Borrowing Garnet's words, "I think you're a very kind person," and that was a critical boost to Jade's emotional well-being. Not to mention, Garnet also believed he was a hard worker who was good with children. Jade was just happy he wasn't a weirdo in the woman's eyes. But in the end, it was too early to celebrate because Garnet heard his practice invitation to the ball earlier as a strange twist of fate. the secret training turned into the real thing, but Jade immediately judged whether he would be rejected, ultimately crushing his dreams or not, as he surprisingly received the receptionist's okay. Even the adventurer couldn't believe this was happening, so Jade flooded Garnet with repetitive questions to confirm if it really was fine for her to accompany him to the king's ball. Jade burst into tears of joy to the point he almost said that he loved Garnet. As usual, he brushed it off, and Garnet chuckled in reply as the two eventually waved goodbye to one another. Unfortunately, Jade didn't see Garnet's whole level of delighted smile due to his lovable invitation, because he had already returned home. Nonetheless, the adventurer was still happy as he practiced dancing with an invisible partner and informed the two girls who had just gotten out from the bath that Garnet agreed to accompany him to the ball. Thus, Jade garnered the motivation to train hard so as not to step on his crush's feet. But first things first, this guy needed to decide on his outfit. The first one was a flop due to how shiny and sparkly it was, and it was a sin to blind Garnet with bright clothes. So he changed into a dark attire with a cape, but the judges greeted it with utterly low marks. Fortunately, the third one looked great, and it was less approved, even though Jade thought it was too plain. But he ultimately settled with this one and thanked the two for their opinions. 5 days remained until the party, and Jade spent it studying and practicing for his goal to capture Garnet's heart with his dance, which was also thanks to the help of Doremi and Marin, who enjoyed the process along the way. Unfortunately, there was no Garnet point of view in her preparations. Not even a single panel, even though the day of the party arrived before that. Marin was with Jade and the White Dragon in the daytime, because they were accompanying the girl in her first quest as an adventurer, as it would be their farewell when tomorrow came. After all, Marin would go home because her original plan was to do only her first job request here in the capital, although it was sad. Jade prioritized the girl's progress, while Doremi, on the other hand, was raring to throw a celebration party between her and Marin to commemorate the girl's achievement of becoming an adventurer. That said, they headed to the guild's registration office where Marin handled it all alone, despite being nervous. She obediently followed the steps to register herself, so after filling out some paperwork, Marin put her hand on the magic crystal to determine what type of crest she would receive. Finally, the flower symbol appeared, allowing the newbie adventurer to return to her companions to deliver the good news, as she successfully acquired the Enhancer crest, which was the same as Jade's. Luck was on this girl's side, so she wasted no moment to begin her adventure tale and headed to the mountain where she met her sworn enemy, a slime. The monster hurriedly ran away to escape from the L's grasp, but after a few seconds of running, Marin used the move taunt to get the slime's attention by comparing him to a chicken. That was an unforgivable insult that forced the subjugation target to fight back and strike Marin continuously, overwhelming her in spite of the strength enhancements she cast on herself. However, Marin immediately discovered a surefire method to win: thrust the blade at the enemy rather than slash it. As a result, the slime turned into a small monotone, which screamed success as Marin finally completed her debut quest as a flower bud adventurer. Now what was left was to meet a handsome receptionist, do job requests to meet him every day, and ultimately become the greatest adventurer. No, not this time. Afterward, it was time for Jade to prepare for the party, and it seemed like he already got the looks that had 100% passing marks, according to Doremi and Marin. Still, Jade couldn't help but feel nervous as it was only a few hours away until he achieved one of his dreams, to dance with Garnet at the castle. Nonetheless, Jade expected the receptionist to arrive for a little bit longer because she still had her shift at work. So the sudden knock surprised all of them, but it didn't stop Jade from opening it and seeing the love of his life. Starstruck, he stared at her outfit and overall appearance in awe, unable to cast his eyes away from the gorgeous woman standing right in front of him. Using her angelic voice to ask Jade if he had waited too long for her arrival, as they looked into each other's eyes, Jade savored this dreamlike moment while the magical night drew nigh and he danced with the woman he loved very soon enough. Nevertheless, Jade's gentle stare continued to rest on Garnet, leaving him speechless to utter compliments regarding the receptionist's gorgeousness. Doram and Marin beat him to it at first, yet Jade still couldn't recover from being charmed by the beautiful woman, whom he even compared to a bride about to get married to her husband. However, Garnet worriedly asked Jade his opinions regarding her looks, but the guy took a few more seconds to answer because he was shocked, as it was the first time she called him by his name. Still, Jade never failed to tell Garnet that she looked absolutely stunning in her dress, causing the receptionist to let out a beautiful smile in response to the adventurer's well-received compliments. Once again, her face captivated Jade, Yet they decided to head out now and visit the fountain and the plaza, as per Garnet's requests. As it was still too early for the grand ball to start, when they left, the kids' party began, as the two celebrated Marine's success on her first quest as an adventurer. They talked about the slime subjugation that fortunately ended before it got dark, and Doromi expressed her full support by congratulating her friend once again. Even though they would be on their separate ways tomorrow, like the innocent versions of drunkards, Doram and Marin drank a cup of milk until they were satisfied, with the former already imagining the lollipop she gobbled as a reward. Thanks to that, Marin realized she wanted to buy something for Garnet using her own money, only to remember that the compensation she received from the Monostone was not enough, as most of it had already been used to buy candies. However, Doromi couldn't bear watching her friend in such a sad state, so the dragon suggested she take on a quest from the guild right now to acquire the money needed for the present. Meanwhile, Jade and Garnet were on their way to the plaza when the nervous hero found out that the receptionist had left work early today, so as not to make Jade wait for so long. Apparently, Garnet was also looking forward to the ball in the castle, not because she wanted to dance, but due to Jade's excitement, which made her feel the same too, albeit with terrible dancing skills. Jade blushed when he heard that, and assured Garnet he would give her a good time so she wouldn't regret coming with him to the party in the first place. Eventually, they arrived at the plaza and saw a special empty seat, but Jade already grabbed the wind as he enjoyed the sight of Garnet's smile, with the fountain as a mere background, before they even sat on the bench. As expected, Jade liked watching Garnet's beauty more than anything else, so he continued looking at her face rather than the famous mountain, while being extra careful as he might be referred to as weird. Unaware of Jade's thoughts, Garnet suddenly thanked him for assisting Marin in her quest, as it was because he was watching her over that she didn't have anything to worry about anymore. Jade realized that Garnet felt uneasy when her sister was out in the woods adventuring, so he finally asked the million-dollar question, wondering if the receptionist was against Marin's dreams. In response, the look on Garnet's face turned into sorrow, and she revealed her fear that Marin would someday end up like their father, an adventurer who rarely came home. Furthermore, they last saw him 12 years ago, before Marin was even born, which meant there was a high possibility that he wasn't in this world anymore. To meet him again, Garnet became a staff member in the guild so she could gather information about her father's whereabouts. To no avail, because there were no sightings or rumors about him even now. For Jade's request, Garnet revealed that her father was named Onyx, a word that rang a bell not just for Pocket Monster fans, but also for Jade, who asked if Onyx had a scar on his right cheek. Moreover, it turned out that he had the injury after protecting Garnet's mother in the past, allowing Jade to confirm it was the same man whom he met in his hometown 12 years ago. At that time, Onyx had a rank 7 flower crest on the back of his hand, and he was also the first adventurer that Jade had met since he was a little kid. Therefore, Jade told Garnet that Onyx's stories about his adventures were the main reason he aspired to be an adventurer like him. 12 years ago, Onyx stopped by Jade's village to tell the young boy his tales and pique his interest in going on many adventures someday. Unfortunately, Jade was 10 years old at that time, and he needed 2 more years to be registered in the guild, but that didn't stop him from aspiring to travel the world and become a hero. Their lively conversation continued until they finally introduced themselves, and the man revealed his name, Onyx, which brings us back to the present where Garnet sees some hope after listening to Jade's backstory. Needless to say, Jade was grateful to Onyx because that man was the reason he became a great adventurer and was able to meet his daughter, with whom he madly fell in love. To thank him for those things, Jade swore to himself that he would find Onyx no matter what, and the adventurer said it to Garnet, assuring her he would gather information even if it was in different countries if needed. After all, Jade also wanted to meet Onyx again, not to mention this was his way of repaying Garnet for accepting his invitation to go to the ball with him. The receptionist chuckled and thanked Jade, telling him she would dance her best tonight as a thank you for his offer. That said, they started to leave, given that it was almost time for the party to start. Unfortunately, a problem occurred as something sticky got attached to the dress and stained it, causing Jade to blame himself for the accident, even though Garnet didn't think it was his fault in the first place. But now that they couldn't insult the king by wearing dirty outfits, Jade dug his own grave by offering to lend a dress from his place. Yes, that did generate level dress collection from a few chapters back. In the end, he pretended it was for Doromi when she got older, so they rushed toward home with the little time they had, only to learn that Marin and the White Dragon weren't here. Jade hurriedly checked the entire house, despite the ominous feeling he sensed, and found out that the two were nowhere to be seen. Suddenly, Jade noticed the mithril shield's absence, and from that, he concluded that Doromi and Marin had headed to the guild to take a quest, not knowing that job requests at night were life-threatening. Without wasting time, Jade urged Garnet to go with him to the guild. Although the king's party was close to commencing, desperate Jade and Garnet yelled their names on the streets on their way to the guild, but received no answer in return. Fortunately, a guild staff member showed up, so Jade asked her about Doromi and Marin, but learned that those two excitedly took on a slime subjugation quest, which was the last thing Jade and Garnet wanted to hear right now. No matter what reason led those girls to expose themselves to danger, Jade planned to bring them back, and he told Garnet to head home and wait. For their return, what about the party then? Like Garnet, of course, Jade was looking forward to attending it too and dancing with the woman he loved. But there were just more important things to prioritize, albeit aware it may be rude to Garnet. As someone who got invited by him to the ball, Jade declared that Doromi and Marin were more precious than any party, even if it was the monarch's birthday. Unfortunately for the king, there was no Jade in his ball again this year.